Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a high-stakes AP statistics simulation and flipping it into a completely thrilling psychological case study. We're talking about polling, human bias, and media narratives. You see, this isn't just about math. It's really about how our brains actively trick us when the pressure is on. We'll be looking at an incredibly detailed simulation called the poll, where analysts act as rival polling firms trying to predict a fiercely contested, albeit fictional, gubernatorial race. The scenarios they get thrown into are incredibly intense, and honestly, seeing the psychological traps set for them is absolutely fascinating. This quote right here captures the absolute core philosophy of the whole exercise. Patience isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's learning to think clearly right in the middle of it. Over a 14-day pressure cooker simulation, the teams aren't just crunching numbers. They're forced to confront their own deepest instincts. When a massive, scandalous headline breaks, do they panic? Or do they think clearly in the middle of the storm? That's the real test.
So here is the timeline for this grueling 2-week journey. Day 1 is the initial assignment. Day 6 brings the first prediction window. Day 7 hits everyone with an October surprise. And day 14 is the final election result. Let's just dive right into it.
Section 1. Welcome to the poll, establishing the baseline. We start off on day 1. The analysts are handed a bunch of mixed economic indicators, but they're given one golden rule. You have to rely on the historical baseline. For the current governor in this scenario, Marcus Hale, history shows an incumbent advantage of plus 4.2 points. Before a single survey is even run, history acts as this massive anchor. If you're going to stray from that baseline, well, you better have a really solid statistical reason to do so. And this sets up the eternal battle our analysts are going to face, trusting the signal versus chasing the noise. The signal is boring, right? It means looking at base rates, leaning into methodological rigor, and actually acknowledging that we just don't know everything yet. The noise, on the other hand, is flashy. It's tiny sample sizes, media hype, and dramatic shifts. Let's face it, our primate brains absolutely love a dramatic narrative, which makes ignoring that noise incredibly difficult. Section 2. Signal versus the noise. The gravity of the crowd. Okay, imagine the pressure here. It's day 4, and the prestigious competing firms start publishing their predictions. Your firm methodically predicts the incumbent is up by 2.3 points, which is totally in line with that boring historical baseline. But then, Pinnacle Research, literally the most prestigious firm in this fictional universe, comes out and says the challenger, Okoye, is up by 4 points. What do? Do you trust your boring, solid data, or do you bow to their massive reputation? Then, on day 5, the trap is officially set. A tracking poll drops showing a massive 4-point shift toward the challenger. An aggressive firm called Data Point Group immediately blasts out a headline screaming about clear momentum. But if you look closely beneath that flashy headline, there's a p-value of 0.169. Mathematically, that proves there is a 17% chance this entire shift is literally just random sampling noise. But honestly, 17% chance of nothing happening doesn't exactly make for a compelling news alert, does it? Section 3. The October surprise, panic in the data. Day 7 hits, and boom, a massive, game-changing scandal breaks about the governor's office. Instantly, an emergency overnight crisis poll is released, and it is terrible quality. It uses a tiny convenience sample, pretty much just calling whoever is angry enough to actually answer an unknown number at 7 p.m. And this poll shows a massive 9-point swing toward the challenger. Now, our analysts are staring down a truly terrifying question. Has the race fundamentally changed? By the very next day, they're forced into choosing between two totally conflicting realities. Poll A is from a university, it's rigorous, it took 3 days to field, and it shows the scandal only moved the race by about 1.4 points, which, by the way, perfectly matches how historical scandals usually play out. Then you have Poll B, a cheap, self-selected online panel whipped together in 24 hours that shows a devastating 9-point swing. Human psychology almost always tempts us to trust the flashy disaster of Poll B. It just feels more real when you're caught in the middle of a media frenzy. Section 4. Traps and cognitive biases. Your brain is tricking you. As the simulation gets deeper, the students start to realize that this entire exercise is actually one giant psychological trap. Cognitive biases are the real villains here, constantly whispering in the analyst's ears, telling them to abandon their rigorous math for a thrilling narrative. You've got base rate neglect, which is forgetting that plus 4.2 historical anchor we talked about, or the representativeness heuristic, where you look at a tiny sample of 150 furious voters and trick yourself into assuming they perfectly represent a state of nearly 3 million people. And that brings us to what might be the most insidious bias of them all, herding. This happens when you move your predictive model toward a competitor's number purely out of social pressure, rather than relying on any actual new empirical data. Herding is incredibly dangerous because it completely corrupts the data pool. Think about it. If you tweak your numbers just because Pinnacle Research published something different, you're now just reacting to other pollsters instead of reacting to the actual voters. The entire system just turns into an echo chamber.
The ultimate test of their methodology drops when a client actually demands biased question wording. A neutral question is standard and fair. But look at the biased version. It sneaks in the phrase, given recent concerns about government accountability, completely priming the voter to think about the scandal right before answering. And then it slaps the shiny label reform candidate right onto the challenger. It brilliantly proves how easily a few loaded words can manufacture an entirely fake 5 to 15 point swing in your data. If you cave and give the client what they want, your methodology is ruined.
Section 5. The boring choice wins. The final reveal. Election day is finally here, and the media's absolute obsession with bold predictions is put to the ultimate test. The simulation reveals two main types of analysts. The bold gambler chased the scandal, ignored the base rates, and predicted a massive 11-point win for the challenger. The media completely loved them, but they failed reality spectacularly. On the flip side, the methodologist, anchored to the baseline, completely rejected the panic polls and accurately predicted a tiny 1.8-point shift. They ended up with incredibly high accuracy and credibility, even though the media completely ignored them for being, well, too boring.
The final margins prove that reality has a very strong bias toward boring math. The aggressive gambler firm, Datapoint, missed the actual result by a whopping 5 points. That massive game-changing scandal, it only shifted the race by a tiny fraction. The actual spread was just 1.3 points. The methodologist, the ones who stuck to their guns and accepted the uncertainty, had an error of less than 1 single point, totally vindicating the historical base rate. So the ultimate takeaway from this brilliant simulation is incredibly profound. In the face of uncertainty and media hype, the boring choice wins. When you're looking at headlines, polls, and data out there in the real world, you've got to remember that your brain actively wants a dramatic story. So the next time a breaking news alert promises a catastrophic, world-changing shift, you have to stop and ask yourself, are you looking at the truth, or is your brain just falling for the noise?